Welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen, and this week it's All Access Rewind. It's a retrospective of a special event that took place in January of 2005, and this was in Tampa, Florida, at the Doubletree Hotel. It was the first ever, the inaugural WrestleReunion. WrestleReunion was a special event that took place at the Doubletree Hotel, and I was there. This was my second convention ever attending as a fan, and boy, was it a special event. I arrived in Tampa. It was raining. It was a rainy day. You know, this convention was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I arrived on Thursday, late afternoon, and, you know, checked into the hotel a night early, you know, just to kind of get settled, and things were going to be starting up that next morning on Friday. So I would get there early. I'd see a lot of the wrestlers and the wrestling superstars arriving, checking into the hotel themselves. You'd see fans coming in and vendors coming in, and it was just an exciting experience to be a part of this. This is something that I had seen being built up for months online. You know, back then there was really no social media. This was more so just, you know, a couple websites. There was WrestlingClothesline.com and Ringside Collectibles, I think, had WrestlingFigs.com at the time still. And you were able to kind of see upcoming autograph signings and that sort of thing. And, you know, I would see WrestleReunion is coming to Tampa. And I live in Rhode Island. So for me, that was a huge deal to travel. You know, this was also my first time on a plane. I had never flown before. So first time on a plane, jumped on a JetBlue. January of 2005, it was only $99 for a round trip flight on JetBlue. They were having a sale. So it shows you how different pricing was back then. And man, I mean, what a special event. I get there, like I said, a day early. As I'm checking into the hotel, they tell me, you know, your room's not ready yet. If you want to go relax in the lobby for a little bit, we'll have it ready for you soon. So I go sit on the couch, and WCW commentator Scott Hudson comes up, says, "You mind if I sit down here with you?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So he sat down not far from me, and just started striking up conversation. And, you know, what a way to start off the WrestleReunion weekend with Scott Hudson, you know, former WCW commentator. And we talked for about 40 minutes or so. Such a nice guy and full of stories. And so just a great experience to kick off the weekend. And then from there, you know, like I said, the convention was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I was a super ticket holder, which was either $200 or $250 at that time for the big super ticket. And the super ticket didn't come with photo ops, but it came with autographs. And you got multiple autographs per superstar with the super ticket. I want to say it was 2 autographs, maybe more. And there were so many superstars there, you know, from Playboy Buddy Rose to sensational Queen Sherry. You had the outlaw Ron Bass. You had Bugsy McGraw. You had, you know, wrestling stars from the territory system, which you wouldn't meet where I was from. So this was something special. This was a treat. And, you know, there were other superstars there like Virgil and Greg the Hammer Valentine and the Warlord and Tully Blanchard and James J. Dillon and, you know, Jeff Jarrett, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Wendy Richter, Peggy Lee Leather was there, Team Blondage, Chrissy Vane and Amber O'Neill, local Florida wrestler Jenny Taylor, legendary Les Thatcher was there. I mean, just truly a who's who of pro wrestling. Promoter Joe Blanchard, the father of Tully, was there. You had the whole family of Gordon Soley there selling his autobiography. You had Johnny Swinger from ECW. You had the total package, Lex Luger. You had Crush, Brian Adams, very rare appearance. Bobby the Brain Heenan. Jack Briscoe. You had the Fantastics, Bobby Fulton, Tommy Rogers. You had the Rock and Roll Express, Ricky and Robert. You had Kamala, the Ugandan Giant. You had the Funk Brothers, Dory Funk Jr., Terry Funk. You had the legendary Bruno Sammartino. You had Nick Bockwinkel, former AWA World's Heavyweight Champion. Like I said, just a true who's who. Joey Styles from ECW, Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, Diamond Dallas Page, Kevin Nash, Jake the Snake Roberts. It was unbelievable. And so I would go on to the first day, had a great time, had a ball, helped ESPN set up a table. They were a vendor there. And for helping them set up the table, because they had asked for some help, they gave me an encyclopedia. Now, this was before the WWE encyclopedia was out, but this was a soft cover, large book, very large, pretty thick, and it was called the Encyclopedia of Pro Wrestling. So very cool. Got a free copy of that just for helping them set up, and I actually used that encyclopedia to get signed by a lot of the stars throughout the weekend. Also met Abdullah the Butcher that weekend. Also met Colonel De Beers, Rugged Ronnie Garvin. I would go on to meet the Midnight Express, Sweet Stan Lane, and James E. Cornette, the Loverboy, Dennis Condrey, beautiful Bobby Eaton. You know, you had members of the Armstrong family there, Scott Armstrong, Steve Armstrong, Brad Armstrong, and the father, Bullet Bob Armstrong. Kimberly Page was there, Shay and Spice of the Nitro Girls as well. So just an unbelievable event. Fidel Sierra, the Cuban assassin, was there. I remember meeting Jumpin' Joey Maggs, who was not a guest at the show, but he was actually there to basically, visit. He must have been a Florida native at the time, was there to visit with some of the stars. And I remember asking for his autograph, and he signed my visor that I had on. And he was so touched that I asked him to sign that he ended up breaking down. He was in tears. I know he was going through some troubled times, a little bit of depression, and unfortunately ended up passing away not long after that. But I really made his day by asking for his autograph because nobody else was really recognizing him. So, he was just thrilled to meet somebody that wanted to meet him, and he was a great guy. You know, also met Head Shrinker Samu and Screamin' Norman Smiley and the living legend Larry Zbyszko and Kevin Von Erich. And who else did I meet that week? There were so many more, but I can't remember all of them. But there was a special wrestling show in the Grand Ballroom that weekend. It was on that Saturday, I believe. And talk about a tremendous lineup, and I have it written down right here. Superfly Jimmy Snuka teamed up with the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant, and Rowdy Roddy Piper in a 6-man tag. They took on Cowboy Bob Orton Jr., Playboy Buddy Rose, and Colonel De Beers. I mean, what a 6-man tag to open up the Legends show. And I was second row ringside, right up against the guardrail of the aisle. So the entranceway was right alongside me, and I was second row ringside. So great seats, great experience. Leaping Lanny Poffo battled Adam Windsor. You also had the Missing Link, Dewey Robertson against George South. There was also Bambi teaming up with Jenny Taylor, Malaya Hosaka, and Wendy Richter. And the four teamed up to take on Amber O'Neal, Chrissy Vane, Team Blondage, along with Peggy Lee Leather and Sherry Martel. Crazy. Lots of people coming out of retirement for this show. And we also had Axxess Jim Duggan one-on-one with the Ugandan giant Kamala. There was Larry Zbyszko and Outlaw Ron Bass in tag team action against Barry Windham and Mike Rotunda, the U.S. Express. We'd also go on to see the Grappler against the Masked Superstar mask versus mask match. And of course, Chris Harris and James Storm, America's Most Wanted, who at that time were the TNA Tag Team Champions, NWA TNA. And they would go on to defend those titles against Terry and Dory Funk Jr. Crazy. The new versus the old. There would also be a big battle royal for the heavyweight championship of that local promotion. The battle royal featured some greats like Bullet Bob Armstrong, Adrian Street, The Hammer, Greg Valentine, Brad Armstrong, Bugsy McGraw, Chavo Guerrero Sr., Hack Myers, Jake the Snake Roberts, Norman Smiley, Scott Armstrong, Samu of the Head Shrinkers, Shane Douglas, Steve Armstrong, the Warlord, the Thunderfoots, 1 and 2 from the Florida territories, and Virgil. Greg the Hammer Valentine was victorious and became heavyweight champion of that promotion. Also on the show, Bobby Fulton and Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson and Tommy Rogers. The Rock and Roll Express and the Fantastics would team up as they battled Bobby Eaton, Dennis Condrey, and Stan Lane. The Midnight Express with Jim Cornette. From there, we'd see Pat Tanaka versus Christopher Daniels. It was a really bad ice storm in Georgia, so AJ Styles couldn't make his flight last minute. So Christopher Daniels was a last-minute replacement. Therefore, it was Chris Daniels versus Pat Tanaka. I'm sorry, Pat Tanaka was a last-minute replacement. Therefore, it was Chris Daniels versus Pat. But it was supposed to be Chris Daniels versus AJ Styles. Jeff Jarrett would go one-on-one with Tully Blanchard. Jarrett would put the NWA TNA World Heavyweight Championship on the line. You had J.J. Dillon in the corner of Tully Blanchard. You had a commentary team of Lance Russell and Joey Styles and the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. It was just great to see all these legends in one spot. And then the main event, big 6-man tag. I believe it was Anything Goes or Hardcore or something like that. And it was Dustin Rhodes, the Natural, teaming up with his father, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, and the legendary Mike Graham from the Florida territories, as they would take on Abdullah the Butcher, Kevin Sullivan, the Taskmaster, and CM Punk. What a 6-man tag that was. There was also an interview segment on that show. I want to say it was Bill Apter interviewing Diamond Dallas Page or Mick Foley, something of that nature. So, yeah, very good show. There were Q&As throughout the whole weekend. There was a Q&A with Diamond Dallas Page and Jake the Snake Roberts. There was a Q&A with the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette. There was a Q&A with Bruno Sammartino. So there were Q&As, pretty much every day, all throughout the weekend. Such a cool opportunity. A lot of people I had met for the first time, and it would end up being the only time I had the opportunity to meet them. People like Playboy Buddy Rose, Sensational Sherry, The Missing Link. There were a few others. Dr. Death, Steve Williams, only time I ever met him. But yeah, Dr. Death was there. Bill Eadie was there, as I said, the Masked Superstar. Marty Jannetty was there as well. Yeah, just so much talent under one roof. Dan Spivey was there. He wasn't a guest at the show, but another one who lived in the area, and he came by to say hello to the superstars. Pat Patterson would be another one that would come by, stop by, and say hello to the superstars, different friends from throughout the years. So there were a lot of surprise appearances. Referee Mickey J, also known as Mickey Henson, he was another one who stopped by and wanted to say hello to friends and that sort of thing. So, just lots of opportunities to meet true legends in the wrestling world. It was an unbelievable experience. And as I mentioned, there were other territory stars there as well. People like Buddy Colt and Paul Jones, number one, and Gary Royal. So this was an opportunity to meet people that I'm not going to get another opportunity to meet. So it was very special to meet a lot of these people. Sabu was there with Bill Alfonso. The Wild Samoans were there, Afa and Sika. I know I'm forgetting some, but there were definitely other superstars. I'm just drawing a blank as to who, but um, well, the Assassin was there as well. Jody Hamilton. This event was run by Rob L. Russin, who had ties with the AWA. Rob L. Russin, who has passed away, unfortunately, since then. It was also run by the Big Cheese, Sal E. Correnti, the former head of the Bruno Sammartino fan club. Always very good friends with Bruno over the years and many of the other wrestlers as well. So these guys did a great job running this convention. A lot of fans thought that the first day was chaos on Friday, that it was unorganized, but it didn't bother me. I really enjoyed myself. And then it felt like it was back on track on Saturday. Everybody was kind of like, all right, this is going a lot better on Saturday. But like I said, either way, it didn't bother me. It was just awesome to be a part of it. And, David Penzer was also there, former WCW ring announcer. He was not a guest, but he was there to stop by and, see some of the people. So that was cool to see. Bill Apter was there from OneWrestling.com at the time, now with Sportskeeda, of course. The King, Harley Race, he was there as well. Got to meet Roddy Piper in the elevator. I was coming down from my room, and Roddy Piper was in the elevator with, it was just me, Piper, and his bodyguard at the time. He had a bodyguard with him. And the bodyguard was standing in between us. And I asked Roddy, or I said, it's, pleasure to meet you or something. And I extended my hand, and the security guard was kind of like, oh, no. But Piper was like, no, don't worry about it. And he goes around his security guard and took a second to, shake my hand, ask if I was there for the event, and, who am I looking forward to meeting. And I mean, he was just really took the time, and I'll never forget that. And then when we got down to the lobby, Roddy took a picture with me in the lobby. So such a nice guy, he really took the time, and he didn't have to do that, meeting Brian Adams was such a cool experience. Crush, always one of my favorites as a kid. This was the only opportunity that I would have to meet him. And he was supposed to be there multiple days, I think Saturday and Sunday. He didn't show up Saturday, so I was like, great. He's probably not going to even be here. He's going to be a no-show. But he showed up Sunday, and I was just so excited to meet Crush. I mean, man, it finally happened. I had been waiting all those years, and it was everything I had hoped for. Brian was such a nice guy. Gave me his email contact at that time, I remember. And, he's like, yeah, let's stay in touch, man. And I mean, he was like really nice, really cool guy. Got a picture with him. Yeah, there were some other people in there that I'm probably forgetting. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, he was another one that was there that weekend as well. But just a special event from top to bottom. They would go on to have a sweepstakes. If you were the highest level of super ticket, holder purchased, which I was, you would automatically be entered into a drawing to win a prize. So I was entered. So it was reported online that there were 450 fans over the course of this weekend for WrestleReunion 1. And that's surprising to me, because being there in person over the course of those 3 days, it seemed like there were more. It seemed like there were a couple thousand, spread out over a few days. But it says 450 online, so I'm not going to argue that. I guess that's what it was. It just seemed like a lot more, at the time. But we're sitting there in the chairs on one of these days, and we're waiting to see who has won the prize. So they pull the number, and it's not my ticket number. And I'm like, oh. So the guy goes up, and he's like, yep, I've won. They checked the ticket, like, you are the winner. And he couldn't. It was a trip to WrestleMania is what you win, which is crazy. And he couldn't accept it because he was in the military and he was actually heading out on another tour of like Iraq or something. So his name was David Hardy, and still keep in touch to this day. You know, all these years later. That was January of '05. Here we are in 2025, and we'll connect every so often, every 5-10 years. We'll we'll connect, and it's just great to keep in contact with him. But a great military man who had to serve and couldn't accept the prize. So they ended up drawing another number, and that other number was me. And I'll never forget that moment. And I go up there, and Sal Correnti, the owner, he's like, all right, so he's talking to me off the mic, and he's like, all right, so what do you want to do here? We can kind of create your own WrestleMania package. He's like, would you prefer to be unbelievable seats at WrestleMania? Meaning like, I guess, I don't know if he meant front row. Maybe he did, but either front row or like right there, ringside. Or option B, would you like really good seats for WrestleMania, but also attend Monday Night Raw the next night and the Hall of Fame the night before? I was like, oh man, I got to do that. I got to do that. So, I chose that. The seats that we had for WrestleMania were purchased for me and mailed to me, and they were called Elite. I'm sorry, they were called Premier Level Seating, and this was WrestleMania 21. WrestleMania Goes Hollywood. It was at the Staples Center, Los Angeles, California, and 2 round trip flights to California were included. And then hotel stay at the Beverly Hills Hilton in Beverly Hills, California for 4 nights was included. And then, of course, 2 tickets to WrestleMania, 2 tickets to Monday Night Raw, 2 tickets to the Hall of Fame, all included. It was crazy. So I put all my friends' names in a hat, and I drew the name out, and my buddy Ryan ended up getting picked. And that's how I chose who was going to be coming with me. At the time, my friend Ryan no longer lived in Rhode Island. He was, for college, he lived in Arizona. So he ended up just driving from Arizona to LAX and picking me up, which was a short drive for him. So one of the flights ended up going to waste, basically. But I flew in, and it was just, a fantastic trip, that WrestleMania trip. But that is a whole other story, and we will talk about that, during another episode. But, as far as that goes, I won the trip to WrestleMania. It was unbelievable. I was in shock. I was a celebrity for the rest of the weekend, walking through the hallways, other fans seeing you, and like, oh, you're the guy who won the WrestleMania trip. You know what I mean? Everybody giving me high fives, and it was pretty epic. So definitely a cool experience. But WrestleReunion goes down for me as my favorite convention of all time. I've been to many since then. Not only that, but it was, like I said, my second convention of all time. So I was still new to the convention scene. And just a nice trip. Tampa, Florida. Nice hotel. Doubletree Hotel. Like I said, I was probably there for 4 nights. I checked in Thursday, was there Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, and then left Monday to return back to Rhode Island. But yeah, the live wrestling show, all the Q&A sessions, and just a great experience. Now, this convention, would go on to become somewhat of a tradition, I guess. WrestleReunion started traveling all throughout Pennsylvania for several years, and I didn't attend any of those. It was the inaugural one for me that had the interest because the lineup was just so impressive, and it was definitely something special, and you could feel it, for sure. But yeah, just being a part of that weekend and winning that WrestleMania trip, like I said, was unbelievable. Helping ESPN, set up the booth, and getting to meet all of those different superstars of pro wrestling, was certainly something special. The Warlord was another superstar that was there. I'm not sure if I mentioned him. He was there. And, everywhere you looked, there was a different wrestling superstar signing autographs and taking pictures and that sort of thing. And I ended up getting, pictures with a lot of the superstars, as you have seen throughout this episode. So I'm grateful for that. And yeah, just being a part of that event, looking back at WrestleReunion, it's one of the early conventions that I attended, like I said. So it's become, kind of a stepping stone for me to really be inspired, I think, to run my own conventions down the line. Fast forward, 5 years later, I started doing my own. So, yeah, kind of all started with the Boston Wrestling Convention, which was my very first, and then WrestleReunion in Tampa. So, yeah, nothing but fond memories for WrestleReunion. They had a program there as well, which I still have to this day. You know, just awesome memories. So they did film the live wrestling show, and unfortunately, it was never released. And there was some type of issue with the tape, or I don't know if it was an issue with the licensing to releasing those matches or something. But for whatever the reason may be, it was never released. So fans have never gotten to see that. So I only have memory of it. I have not been able to go back and check it out, unfortunately. But what a special event, and I hope that comes out on DVD eventually, because it was just such a special event, such an iconic event. What a wonderful wrestling card for the true wrestling fans. So. And that should pretty much do it. Just want to thank you for tuning in. All Access Entertainment Podcast. This has been the All Access Rewind, a retrospective of WrestleReunion 1. And that's pretty much it. So just want to say thank you for tuning in to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. It's been the All Access Rewind, a retrospective of the inaugural WrestleReunion 1. Very special event. And please like, share, subscribe to our page, and please leave your comments. We want to hear from you. Were you at the very first WrestleReunion? If you were, leave your comments. We'd like to hear all about it, all about your experiences, and what some of your favorite wrestling conventions have been over the years. And we'll see you all